Hey guys, and welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. Today's video is going to be a little different to some of the stuff that we normally do on the channel. It's going to be more of a sort of discussion style video like Steve would do with unboxing boxes. And we're going to be talking about smartphones, specifically the smartphones that I think are some of the best value buys out on the market right now. Everything from sort of your high-end stuff right at the top, like your Galaxy S9s, all the way down to, I think we're going to go down to about $100 in this video. So we'll be covering a whole ton of price points for you guys. And this is actually a video that I was tossing up whether or not I'd actually do, considering obviously most of the content on our channel is to do with PCs and that sort of thing. But I asked you guys on the community tab of our YouTube channel, more than 1,000 people voted. So thank you very much for that. I think at the time of filming this, it was about 69% of people wanted to see this video. So I thought that's probably enough to sort of justify making one. So we're going to go through very casually. We'll just take a look at some smartphones and yeah, I'll give you guys my thoughts. So let's get into it. I've actually printed some Gamers Nexus style notes here for this particular one. Normally we use a teleprompter to film most of our videos, but I felt that it's time to test out to see whether my printer still actually works. So we'll start right at the top end, and I think for most people, you're going to be deciding whether you want to use Android or iOS. I think there's not many people that are really tossing up between, say, like an iPhone X or a Galaxy S9 or a Pixel 2 XL straight up on value. I still think that, you choose one of those ecosystems and stick with it pretty much for life. So obviously with iOS, you choose an iPhone X, that's the best iPhone you can get on the market. As far as Apple devices go, that's pretty much the best one. As far as Android devices go, there's a lot of really good options at the top end. And I think it comes down to sort of two brackets, you'd have to say. I think if you really want the best hardware in terms of the overall package, at the moment I'd be going for the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus and the Snapdragon version of that specifically. And there's a couple of reasons for that. So the Galaxy S9 Plus has a really great display. It's high resolution. It's got really good color quality. You've got accurate modes in there as well as the vibrant modes. The Snapdragon 845 that you get in the Snapdragon model, really good performance, really good cellular performance for things like 4G LTE. It's got a whole range of connectivity features there that aren't necessarily supported on some other devices. Gigabit LTE is one of them. It's got really good battery life as well. The larger phone, the S9 Plus in particular, has that good battery life. The S9, the smaller one, not quite as much, but I quite like what the S9 Plus Snapdragon model provides in that respect. And as well, the really good cameras on the back. I really like the 1000 FPS slow motion that it can do. The dual aperture thing is neat. And the color quality and just general image quality from the camera is really good. There's a few things that I would say though about the S9 Plus that I don't like. The Exynos model I think is worth avoiding. So for those of you in Australia like me, unfortunately the Exynos model is the one that we're actually being given. But I think that model, because of a few performance issues, it's more last generation in its performance and battery life isn't that impressive. I would steer clear of that one. This is the Pixel 2 XL. Long time was my daily driver. I'd probably stick to that if you're in Australia for the best phone that you can get. The Galaxy S9 Plus, you get an Exynos model like this one, which is not something that I would recommend, unfortunately. Yeah, the other concerns I have is with the software. I don't like Samsung software all that much. It has been improving, but there's still a lot of bloatware. There's still a lot of things that I think slow down the performance a bit compared to the stock Android experience that you get with something like the Pixel 2 XL. So what I would recommend, I know you guys, mostly I'm assuming you're enthusiasts for this sort of thing. If you get the S9 Plus, I would definitely be going and looking on XDA developers, getting either a stock ROM and just flashing that entirely, or alternatively using things like the Pixel launcher and just generally swapping out as much of Samsung's garbage as you can, because yeah, the Samsung software option is not that great. And that's really one of the reasons why I still like the Pixel 2 XL, because you get the stock Android, and the camera on the Pixel 2 XL is also slightly better than I think you get with the Galaxy S9 Plus. So next up, we have the best value Android smartphone, or best value smartphone overall. And I think this one is the one that I would personally be buying over some of those top-end devices. And actually, it's become my daily driver recently. This is the OnePlus 6. And yeah, there's not a lot of bad things I can say about this phone, really, considering I've been using it for quite a while. I've used a lot of these other phones for a while as well. But this one in particular, it's $520 US through the OnePlus store, $530 US, I think, for the 64 gig model. Admittedly, you do miss out on some of the features that some of the top end phones would get. There's no micro SD card slot, there's no waterproofing. The camera quality isn't quite the same level as your Pixels or your Samsung Galaxy S9s, but you still get things like a Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 SoC. It's really fast, and in this particular unit, considering it uses mostly a stock Android experience, I found it to be really fast, and actually in some of our real-world benchmarking I've sort of been doing on the side, it was edging out some of the other devices just a little bit, which is always nice to see from that sort of phone. It's also got a headphone jack. I know there's a lot of discussion about whether, dongles are still a thing and still, the real downsides to having dongles, but I love having the 3.5mm headphone jack still in the phone because I still have headphones that use it. And the Pixel 2 is one of those phones that doesn't have the headphone jack, so annoyingly you have to use the dongle. The S9 Plus has one, but I just think it's one of those features that really adds to the value, even though it's just a really sort of small feature, I guess you'd have to say. Other things, I guess it is splash proof, the device. Again, no micro SD card slot. Uses Oxygen OS, which is very close to stock Android. You won't get the same level of, I guess, updates that you would get from a Pixel device, but because it's stock Android, I think there really isn't a lot of things that you need to adjust out of the box to make that a really nice usage experience, and there's not a lot of bloatware on there either, so as far as the software is concerned, it's great. And the display, 1080p class large display, I think it's 6.3 inches or thereabouts, and it has got the notch. I was really big notch hater before getting into using this device, but honestly after using this for like a month or so now, don't notice the notch, so changed my opinion on that one, but I really like what this smartphone provides for the $530 that you would get it through Amazon. Unfortunately, for those of you in Australia, not available in Australia. You'll have to either import it or, yeah, I don't really know. I think OnePlus used to sell the OnePlus 5 in Australia, but they've got a bit off that bandwagon with the OnePlus 6, unfortunately. So next year's the mid-priced phone, sort of looking in your $200 to $400 US price range. And there's a lot of phones in this market, a lot of phones. And one thing that I really don't like people recommending, and I see this a lot in a lot of articles out there, is there's so many mid-range options that just don't give you good value for money. They skimp on things in the hardware, then don't give you features that other smartphones available in that price tier give you. Things like your mid-tiers from Sony, from Samsung, LG, HTC, all of those companies I think have pretty unimpressive mid-range options, but there are a couple of standouts. The first category that I always like recommending is flagship phones from the last generation. So often if you go back and look on Amazon for things like LG's last generation phones, Samsung's last generation phones, they might be starting to fall into that $400, sub $400 price category. And I think those phones provide really good value. The Pixel 1 at the moment, so that's the first generation Pixel, the one before this one that I've got over here. That's currently retailing for $320 US on Amazon. It's a really good buy. It's got the Snapdragon 821 in there, which is much faster than your Snapdragon 600 series SoCs like you typically see in mid-range devices. The camera, it's pretty much unparalleled in that price range. It's still really good. Stock Android, you could get Google's official software updates because it's still supported there. Battery life is quite good from the smaller Pixel, which is the one that's $320. So I think all around for $320, that combination of hardware, it just blows out of the water, to be honest. Some of those other smartphones, things that only give you the Snapdragon 600s, the crappy 13 megapixel rear cameras, all that sort of thing. It's just way better value for money, in my opinion. For $250, I would recommend at the moment the Motorola Moto G6, I believe, the new one, the G6. I've recommended the Moto G phones for a long time. And I know this sort of riles up people who are sort of more in the Xiaomi and cheap Android device side of things. But I really think that for a lot of people who just want a phone that works well out of the box, you can't go past the near stock Android experience that Motorola provides on the Moto G phones. It really is so much better than the crap you get with Xiaomi phones. And especially when you import a lot of Xiaomi phones, you have to install the Google Play Store through dodgy means. They'll come with Chinese installed out of the box. Sometimes you have to install English. I've actually had to do that on Xiaomi devices in the past. I really like what Xiaomi provides from a hardware perspective. I think they do quite well there. But considering the Moto G6 is only $250 and you're getting a Snapdragon 450, which is reasonably powerful in that sort of price range, 32 gig of storage is standard, micro SD card slot, headphone jack. It's got a 5.7 inch 1080p class 18:9 display, so it's hitting those modern trends there with the display, and I quite like the display on it. Battery life's really good because you're getting that Snapdragon 400 series SoC, but the crucial thing really is that software. It's going to be updated to the new version of Android that's coming out shortly. No guarantees with Xiaomi devices whatsoever there, and I just way prefer using stock Android. So probably going to get a ton of comments saying that the Xiaomi devices are better from their hardware, and I would agree in some cases that that's true. You would get better hardware, but for someone that just wants to pick up a phone and use it straight out of the box, I think the Moto G6 provides a much better experience and much less frustrating experience. And the camera's not too bad either. For those that want to spend a little bit less money, the Moto G6 Play is $200 through Amazon. Also a good option. You sacrifice a bit of performance and a few other hardware features, but you do save a good amount of money there. So that's two options. And for those of you in Australia who aren't available to access these phones through Amazon, unfortunately, where things like the Pixel 1 and the G6 aren't as good value for money, I would still recommend the G6. I think it's a really good option here in Australia as well. It's actually really competitively priced here, so that's quite a good option. And the final category, the below $100 phone. Now, there's a few caveats I want to talk about with $100 phones, and one of them is really you should avoid buying them. I think once you start getting to $200, $250, like with your G6s and your G6 Plays, you really get good value for money there. You get decent hardware, decent displays, decent cameras, and you can use one of those phones and live and have a good life, not be frustrated. I think $100 is really, you really are strapped for cash and you're trying to save as much money as possible. So I would still stick to your $200 phones if you can. I know some people can't, so the phone I recommend for $100 is the Xiaomi Redmi 5A. And I know I was just talking about Xiaomi phones having less than ideal software, let's say, but I think once you're getting to that $100 category, you really want all out just the best hardware. You'll sort out the software later. And to be honest, there's really not that many options at the moment in that price category that give you sort of like a good software experience plus good hardware. Not a lot of competition, I would have to say. So for $100, what do you get? 5-inch 720p display, pretty basic, but importantly, you get a Qualcomm Snapdragon 425. So that's one of the fastest SoCs you can get in this product sort of space in terms of pricing. Often we see with these sort of phones, you get Qualcomm Snapdragon 200 series SoCs, which is super slow and like pretty much unusable. MediaTek SoCs, which I don't really like for a range of reasons. They have weaker modems. They tend to not be that impressive with their performance. I still think there's a few issues with their sort of governors and that sort of thing that Qualcomm is tied up a bit better with the Snapdragon 400 series. So really like the inclusion of the Snapdragon 425 there. And I really hate recommending super slow phones to people, so I would avoid anything with like lower than that performance. Dual SIM as well, 3000 mAh battery. There's really a lot of things to like about that phone, considering you can import one for literally $100. And again, in Australia, through these importing websites, you can get very good currency conversion, so I'd still recommend it. I think it's like 150 Australian dollars or thereabouts imported. That's a really good deal, so I'd look into that one. And another phone that I would also be keeping my eye out on, this one hasn't been released yet, but is the Nokia 2.1. So that's an Android One phone, which means you're getting more of a stock Android experience than the Redmi 5A. But it does also include like the Snapdragon 425. I believe some of the features aren't quite as good. I think it's only got 1 gig of RAM and 8 gig of storage, whereas the Redmi 5A is a bit better in those two departments. Very similar display as well, but that should be coming in just probably slightly more than $100 that the Redmi 5A is at. So that's another one I'll be keeping my eye out for I think it's supposed to be released this month. So keep an eye out for that one. Phones that I have also used that I sort of wasn't as keen on, LG G7. Yeah, I don't think it's as good value as something like the OnePlus 6. I'd probably pick up this one over the G7, and a lot of the hardware features are very similar. Same with the HTC U12 Plus. They had the button issue, which really frustrated me. And again, HTC has good camera support, good camera software, all that sort of thing, runs good software. But again, I just think the value, with a sort of phone like the HTC U12 Plus, I think you should either go higher end and get the best sort of hardware you can get for the price, which would be like your Galaxy S9 Plus, or you sort of save money and get a OnePlus 6 or even a lower tier device, things like the Pixel 1 that I was talking about that you can get on a really good special at the moment, and potentially the new Xiaomi flagship as well. I really like the Mi 6 when that was released last year. I thought that provided really good value for money in terms of its hardware. So I think as well, looking for those Xiaomi flagship devices can be quite beneficial as well. So this has been an interesting video, I'm sure, for you guys, a bit more of that sort of discussion style using the paper notes, which, let's be honest, I'm going to continue using a teleprompter because I prefer it that way. But yeah, I hope you guys sort of learned something about what we recommend here that you guys use at Hardware Unboxed. I'm going to continue using the OnePlus 6 in case you guys were wondering. Steve, I believe, uses a Galaxy S8 Plus at the moment. So if you want to know what we use, that's what we use. And that's sort of what we recommend. Links to all the things we're talking about will be in the description below through Amazon if you're in the US, and most of these recommendations also carry over to Australia. So if you're buying through a website like Kogan, which I think tends to do pretty good phone deals, a lot of things that we're talking about here can also be found through there, and I would recommend. So that's it for this one. Like this video if you liked it. We're not going to be doing a lot of smartphone content regularly at all, really. So don't worry, we're going to be getting back to doing PC stuff very, very shortly, and we might update this sort of video doing sort of a roundup of smartphones maybe twice a year or something like that. So don't worry, I'll be getting back to doing some display testing and other things right after making this video. If you have any questions about smartphones, we're more than happy to discuss it with you in either the comments on this video or check out our exclusive Discord chat available for our Patreon supporters. This video feels like it's been going on for a very long time, so I'm just going to end it and I'll catch you in the next one.